Okay, so this is your introduction to argument, or as your book calls it, persuasive writing. I highly recommend that you read the chapter in the book as well as watch this, because my lectures, because I've been teaching this so long, are a combination of chapters from various textbooks that I've just been building up over the years. So a lot of what's in your book is in the lecture here, but some of it isn't. And when we do the week quizzes, you'll be responsible for both information, what's in the PowerPoints and what's in the book. All right, so here we're taking off the gloves. This is what we don't want to have happen. And this actually isn't an argument, it's just a fight. So, for our concerns, an argument actually uses reason, it uses statistics, it uses facts, and it uses values to change how one thinks or acts. So this is what you're trying to accomplish with your argument is to change how somebody perceives something or how somebody behaves. What it's not is a listing of personal opinions based on emotions, which because of cable news, uh, is what a lot of people in this country think is an argument. And most people aren't making arguments. They're just ranting and raving their opinions based on their emotional response to something, which is not an argument. You need to stay pretty unemotional, need to stay objective. You need to use facts, statistics, figures, information to actually support your argument, not saying things like, well, that's just not fair. Well, that's not an argument. Yeah, maybe it isn't fair, but that doesn't help you with your argument. All right, so the elements of an argument, and we went over this with the tolmien, and we'll go over it again in other areas, is you have a claim. This is the statement that you're asking the person to accept. This will be part of your research proposal when you have to submit that. You have to have support. This is the reasoning behind the claim, the data, the evidence, and how all of that applies to the claim. Please pay attention to the last half of that sentence and how they apply to the claim. You cannot, when you're writing an argument or a research paper, just lay out the information you've gathered and force the reader to see how it supports the claim. You have to tie the information back to your claim. You have to do a clear job of that. So one of my criteria for good writing is writing that doesn't make the reader do anything but read. Your writing should be clear enough and you should tie your support clearly back to your claim or your thesis in such a way the reader doesn't have to try to figure out what you're saying. That's bad writing when the reader has to do additional work to figure out what you're saying or how something supports your claim. All right, now the elements of argument, you have evidence, anything that helps prove that the claim is true. Any facts, any statistics, any history, any personal experience. So yes, you could argue something and use your personal experience, something that actually happened to you. That's known as anecdotal evidence. However, it can only be a very small part. You cannot base your argument mostly on your personal experience. Your personal experience may end up being entirely unique and it didn't never happen to anybody else. So you need the other evidence to also help you. And then the explanation, you may sometimes have to give more information regarding the evidence. So the evidence itself may need more uh, support. So you need to be aware of that. Now, at one point in the semester, we'll cover Rogerian argument, which is a big part of what I'm talking about now, is that you want to argue respectfully. This is the other problem with cable news. People just yell and scream at each other and they have no respect for the other person's viewpoint. Most of the time, people's viewpoints are valid and you need to respect that. So one of the things you can do is to find common ground. What values do you share with your reader? This allows you to establish your credibility as being a person who could be listened to, somebody who's objective and somebody who's being fair in the way that he or she is presenting the evidence. This then makes your audience more receptive to what you have to say. If they respect you, they've had more chance that they're actually going to listen to what you have to say. And it allows you to also, by being respectful, more understanding of the opposing view. You need to take into account that people have reasons for why they believe differently than you, and you have to respect that. All right, now this is huge, and if we were in a classroom right now, I would be jumping up and down to emphasize how important this is. You need to know your audience. Your audience is going to have different beliefs. Your audience is going to have different perspectives depending on who they are. And you can't say, well, I'm writing for everyone. Well, no, you can't do that. You have to write for a specific audience. So you need to have an age group like 18 to 24 or 24 to 36. You need to have at least uh, gender. Are you writing for both men and women, or are you just writing for one or the other? Because there are arguments that are just made towards men or arguments made just to women. Not all arguments are for both genders. And you need to at least know their education level. You cannot use the same information and the same vocabulary for somebody who's in high school as for somebody who's got a PhD. There's certain assumptions you can make about somebody who's graduated from college, that they have certain knowledge that possibly a high school graduate doesn't have. Doesn't mean the high school graduate won't have it. A lot of people have self-educated, but you know that if somebody's gone through college and obtained a degree, they will have certain knowledge. They have to. It's the only way to get the degree. All right, so the different audience I'm showing you here is like you have members of AARP. These are all people over 50. They have a much different view of the world than somebody who's 25. You need to be aware of that. Environmentalists are very different from pro-business anti-environmentalists. Students are very different from people who are no longer students. You have to know who you're writing for. All right, now this we're going to go over a couple of times. Some of the information in this lecture you'll see a number of times later in the semester as we go more in depth. But you have authority, emotion, and logic. This is based on Aristotelian argument, which is the opposite of the tolmene you're looking at. So you have the authority, the ethos. This reflects the author's credibility. The way that is established is by using research and experts for support and having a reasonable balanced tone. Emotion, this is pathos. This just allows you to connect with the audience emotionally and through their value system, but be careful. No two people are the same. The example I always say, you're in a group of three people and you tell a dirty joke, off-color joke. Two of the people laugh and the other one looks at you like you're the worst sinner in the world. Be careful. And then logic, this we will go over a number of times in this class. It's absolutely necessary for a good argument, is that your evidence and your explanation make sense. And in order to do that, you also make sure that there's coherence in the essay. And if this wasn't covered in your Comp 1 class, your coherence is that within each paragraph, ideas logically connect to one another, and then within the essay itself, the paragraphs themselves naturally one leads to the next and the one follows the previous. That's coherence, that things make sense. Now, writing it, all you have to do is determine your thesis, your claim, gather your evidence, write your rough draft, revise it, read the revision, revise again, edit and proofread, just like any other essay. All right. This one's a little bit different that you will need to have research. You don't have to have evidence. A lot of times you can write an essay just from what you have in your own head. Not in this case. And then you need to know your purpose in your audience. What's your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish with your research paper? Are you just trying to get people to see things in the same way that you see them? Are you trying to get people to take certain actions? And again, who's your audience? What characteristics? Because of that, you'll ask what values and what morals they have. How are those similar or different from you? All right, so that's just an introduction to argument. There'll be more on this as we go through the semester and as we go more into research and how to write a research paper.